Welcome to the Always Bayern Chelsea show, everybody. It's Saturday, November 22nd. Club football is back. Bayern and Chelsea both had good wins today after sleepy starts. Chelsea beat Burnley 2-0, and then Bayern Munich thrashed Freiburg 6-2. So yeah, welcome into the show. Tomorrow is Jim and I's birthday, so that means you have to subscribe. I don't think there's any if, ands, or buts about it. You just got to do it. You got to like, you got to comment. And we're here to break down these two fun matches for you.
Please send me all the birthday comments. Send them to Danny as well. We are birthday twins, as we've discussed on here. So really a great birthday gift for both of us. Getting two nice wins to start off the morning, and it's only 11:15 a.m. So this is nice.
This is very nice. And I guess why don't we just jump right into it? Obviously, we had that international break, but now club football is back. And yeah, I mean, Chelsea started off the morning with that 2-0 win over Burnley, bright and early, which is not ideal coming off the international break, but ended up being a nice win for Chelsea. You can't really say anything's a must win at this point, but with the way teams like Liverpool are playing, it's a great win for Chelsea.
Yeah, it was a weird match. Not a perfect match at all, but you take the 3 points at the end of the day. The way the league is shaping up right now, it's looking like a really nice win. As you mentioned, Liverpool loses 0-3 at home to Nottingham Forest just a little bit here ago. So it's looking like Chelsea are in a good spot. They shoot up to second in the table, still pending Man City match, of course, tomorrow, I think, unless they play today. I forget, but nonetheless, it's a great spot for Chelsea to be in. And it was interesting because you come into this match, Maresca's making the comments, how he hates that this is their second match now they've had after a break playing at 12:30. And it is unfortunate, but that's the hand you get dealt, and you have to deal with that. So I think it's even more special that Chelsea were able to come off the break not playing Moises Caicedo and getting a huge win in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome if you're Chelsea. And as you can see here, I do have the graphic up on the side, so we're going to be going for glory, I guess, with these new graphics. But yeah, why don't we jump into the match? I was asleep for the first half an hour or so, but caught the rest of it, and luckily that was the best part to be asleep for in terms of what happened in this one.
Yeah, Chelsea were asleep for the first half as well, you could argue. First 30 minutes, I should say. Burnley looked pretty good, to be honest. They actually had more possession in that first portion, really the first third of the match. And Chelsea were maybe just a little tired off the break or not quite in sync. They did make 4 changes in their lineup, if you want to go over to that tab, and I'll run through it. Sanchez, of course, the Premier League keeper. Hello, Polly. How you doing? And then they went with, usual left and right back, Cucurella and Reece James. Reece James always was going to only play the first half, according to Maresca, after the match. And then you saw Chalobah and Tosin, which this will be my first point of contention for Enzo Maresca potentially here. Fofana not even in the squad due to rest, according to Maresca, which I think is fair. If you're planning on playing him against Barcelona, I think that's a fair move to make. And if that's what we see on Tuesday, then I think we'll look back and say, okay, that was a smart decision. I don't know what you thought of that back line when you saw it, but to me, Fofana, Badiashile was technically back. Achimpong sounds like they're still kind of easing in, similar to Esteva. But it's interesting. Tosin and Chalobah just always make me nervous.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And for me, it's like I don't know if I'm really going to be able to fully give you an opinion on this back line until I see the back line against Barcelona. Like I mentioned it in the preview episode that we did for this one. I think at this point, I wanted to see um, Achimpong, Fofana. I don't care for Chalaba really at this point. But on the other hand, maybe you do want to use him in a match like this because you're not expecting Burnley to be as strong as a Barcelona. So I think I can't quite judge it yet. I think not having Fofana in the squad is kind of foolish. And this is a little bit of a joke, but I'm actually seriously asking, Is he getting disciplined at all for his speeding ticket? Like, I don't think his reckless driving. I mean, we haven't heard about any sort of disciplinary action taken for that. But I don't think he'd be like held out of a match because of it.
Yeah, I have no clue if that's related at all. I mean, it sounds like he's being rested. Like if you're not planning on playing him, I guess you might as well just leave him out of the squad. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting a spot. So that's kind of fair. I don't know. And it's interesting. Like this isn't going to be the back line against Barcelona.
Right.
And we'll maybe talk about that later as we preview. But you're probably going to see something else. But really, before I even talk about the rest of this lineup, the reason Burnley were playing well in that first third was because they were quick on the break, and then it just seems like Chalobah and Tosin half the time panic. Burnley had really the best chances, didn't end up on target, but I think Chelsea had 3 big blocks where Burnley's on the counter. Chalobah at one point kind of lets the guy get a shot off, but then blocks it. I think Tosin had a block. I know Santos for sure had a block. So it was nervy in that first third because we've seen all throughout this season when teams get on the break against a Tosin and against a Chalobah, they can get around them and they can score. So that did make me nervous until Chelsea ended up kind of getting out of that laziness.
Yeah, that's fair. And I do think that the midfield, Chelsea's midfield did very well today, but I think it maybe takes just a little bit of adjusting when you don't have a defensive rock like Caicedo there, to maybe, let's just say, like sweep up some of the Chalobah Tosin mistakes. Or at least just provide a little something else, because neither Chalobah nor Tosin are fast. And I think, it just maybe took them a little bit to get used to, not having Caicedo there. Again, I think the midfield did great today, but Caicedo is just like on another level in terms of CDM.
Yeah, and that was why they struggled the first 15 minutes. Also because they were apparently expecting a back five. Burnley went with a back four, went with a 4-3-3. So that makes sense that they, took a little time to adapt, adjust to that. And, you talk about that midfield. I think Santos just needed that little adjustment period to really get his feet out from under him, because then after that point, he saves Tosin and Chalobah a couple of times, and really, after the 20th minute, let's say, was the best player on the pitch, in my opinion, and really was a Caicedo regen, to be honest. Interceptions all over the place, making smart passes, being in all the great spots, covering for those defenders. Him and Enzo together. Enzo was even making some good interceptions, late in the first half, in the second half. So those two as a midfield, I think, showed that they can be really good together, which is huge for Maresca to see that Santos can be that CDM guy as a replacement for Caicedo.
Yeah, you need to give Caicedo some rest. I mean, the guy is just playing all the time, and obviously, you know, the schedule isn't slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it gets worse. So you definitely need a guy like Santos, in my mind, to play in these matches against a team like Burnley, where Burnley's not like horrible, but they're not a Barcelona, and you play Barcelona midweek. So you just need to have confidence in more than one guy to play that position. And it's awesome that Santos showed today that you can call his number, and things are going to be okay.
Yeah, and with Lavia out, who knows? Even when he comes back, we can never really trust him. So Santos will get more minutes here the rest of this season. The attack, on paper here, you got Gittens, Pedro, Neto, and Delap. I think it made sense. You're giving Garnacho a little bit of a rest, expecting that you'll need him for Barcelona and Arsenal, which I think is the right move. He's been your more informed left winger, and you want to get Gittens' confidence up against a side like Burnley. The Neto move, I think he's just your right winger you play. And even though he's dealt with some injuries, some knocks, I think you're still treating Estevao as a young kid that he is, and trying to find the right moments to play him. Does that mean he'll start against Barcelona? I still don't know if that's going to be the case, but nonetheless, I thought Neto looked great. And then, this Delap-Pedro pairing, I think they're still figuring each other out. I think Delap He was out for a while with injury, was out with a red card issue. Him and Pedro just aren't quite in sync, but there's still a lot of potential there. So the fact that Chelsea are scoring goals with these two maybe not in the best form is only a positive, I think.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, in terms of Delop, I was texting you today. I don't like what I've seen so far, but that does mean there's only nowhere to go but up, I guess. Um, and I've been preaching patience with Gittens, so maybe same goes for Delop. I would play Estevao. I just think he's so much better than these other Chelsea wingers. Again, it's just the way I see it. Could be right, could be wrong, but I think you need a guy like that against a Barcelona team. I think he's the kind of guy who could exploit that Hansi Flick high line if there ever was one.
Yeah, and we'll see what Maresca goes with. I think he's going to revert back to his PSG lineup that he loves against these teams, but we'll see. I think for sure Estevao is going to get at least 30 minutes to show what he can do, whether it's in the first half or toward the end of the game. But to Neto's credit, he's been a rock for Chelsea this season in the league. I think they were saying today was his fourth Premier League goal, and I think he already has more goal involvements or more goals total across all matches than he had last season, which is crazy to say. So he's really stepped up when maybe some of these guys aren't. When Palmer's out, obviously Noni left, so that's been huge. And that breakthrough came, what was it? 30 something minute, I want to say, for Chelsea.
Yeah. And I will say too, like I like Pedro Neto. I think he is um, a guy who does a lot for you, even when he's not scoring off the ball. I think he's great. I think he's great defending. I think I would probably play him at left wing and Estevao at right wing against Barca. Again, with Neto's pace, I just think that would be such a big difference maker for that high line. But again, I know that Garnacho has been doing well lately, so that's also another option. But yeah, we got the goal finally happened in that 37th minute.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful ball from Jamie Gittens. I can't even recall how he gets the ball, but ends up delivering in a curled ball with his right foot. Looks like he's probably going for the head of Enzo Fernandez, gets just over Enzo, and then
Yep.
Neto kind of does a diving header. And I think he was joking after the match that in training he was doing a bunch of terrible headers, but finally gets that one to go in. And just what Chelsea needed because they had started so poorly, but are able to finish the half on really a strong foot. And they ended the half really well. Looked like the more dominant team.
Yeah, I mean, that goal kind of broke things open for Chelsea a little bit, just in terms of they were sleepy. And Bayern was sleepy too in the beginning of these matches. So maybe a little international break malaise. Maybe it's just figuring out, that the different formation from Burnley. Maybe it's a combination of things, a couple substitutions or a couple rotations, I should say, in there. But yeah, I mean, that was a beautiful, beautiful cross from Gittens. I think you're right. I think it was going for Enzo Fernandez, but yeah, luckily Pedro Neto is just there with a goofy looking but so beautifully done diving header. And the amount of pace that he got on the ball is anything but goofy because it was too much for Burnley to handle.
And that's what Maresca loves to do, to his credit. He loves just getting guys forward, getting guys in the box. We saw it with Gusto last week. We've seen it with Marc Cucurella over the last couple of seasons. Just throw a bunch of guys in the box and things will happen. You're going to get goals. He talks about how he wants to see his goals spread across a bunch of different guys, bunch of guys getting 10, 15 goals as opposed to one guy getting all the goals. And I think that's a fair strategy, and that's clearly what he wants. And so far, that's exactly what's happened this season.
I mean, that's what you have to do against a team like Burnley too, I think, is really just, throw as many bodies as you can into the box, try and break them down because you're probably going to have more possession. So, push forward with that possession and eventually something's going to happen if you're whipping in crosses into the box, if you're, if there's a bunch of different players interacting with the ball and whatnot, it's eventually going to happen. And it did. So yeah, great. Well, I shouldn't say great, but with how the match went, that it was great to go into halftime 1-0.
Certainly was. And then we saw the halftime change where Benoit Badiashile came on for Reece James. As discussed, this was pre-planned by Enzo Maresca to get James ready for the huge week ahead that Chelsea have. Kind of made sense. You put Badiashile then on that left-sided center back next to Tosin, and Chalobah's more of your right-sided center back in your back three with Cucurella doing really a lot of nice work in the midfield today. I thought Cucurella was outstanding in his inverted role in the midfield. And actually, now I do remember how they scored that first goal, because it was Cucurella that ends up making a run towards the box, gets the ball, and then filters it back out to Gittens. So really showing how valuable Cucurella can be in those positions, which is crazy. Cucurella can do it all. I mean, 6.5 is just an atrocious rating for what he actually did today. I thought he was much, much better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, better than a 6.5 for sure. He was, just doing what he always does, which is get involved with the attack, like you said. And they ended up with a clean sheet. So there's really not a whole lot of bitching you could do about anybody's defending in this one, really. So yeah, Cucurella, he did what he had to do today.
Yeah, and the rest of the second half, not many issues for Chelsea. I thought they were pretty dominant. They had a lot more possession in the second half. I don't know if you want to pull up the stats just for the second half, but Chelsea should have scored more goals. Pedro had a chance that he kind of didn't do great with. The Lop decision making was not great. Should have crossed the ball into Enzo. That would have been just a wide open goal. That would have been very nice. They were just putting themselves in pretty good positions as Burnley was opening up a little bit more, but then they didn't quite have that final third moment that they needed. And then you saw Gusto come on for Delap. Enzo maybe getting a little more defensive, shoring up the midfield, which, maybe was fair if you want to just get out of a away match with 3 points. And then eventually you did see Marc Guiu on for Pedro, which always is awesome at the end of a match. When you can tell a guy that has a ton of energy go on for 20 minutes and just run, that's got to be so scary as a defender, just like knowing that this guy's coming after you and just really doesn't give a crap. He's just going for it.
Yeah, I was, I mentioned it. I noticed a number of times where Delap was just selfish or just didn't make the right decision. And, I don't think he's quite gelling with this team yet. So I was happy to see him come off, but I even texted you. I wanted it to be Guiu for Delap at that point. I didn't necessarily love going defensive this early in the match. I get it eventually, but 67th minute is a little early. But we finally did see Guiu come on, like you said, and I was just really happy to see him. Like you just mentioned, though, the energy that he brings, that's the reason why you want to see him in a match like this in the 76th minute when the defense is getting tired.
Yeah, and to be fair, the defenders look great at this point. I was feeling nervy because you just never know what's going to happen. Burnley are making subs, but I don't even know if they had a shot on target. I'm not sure if Sanchez made a save all day. I think I recall maybe one that he caught pretty easily, but he really did not look threatening at all. So credit to the Chelsea defense for that. And then late in this match, you see a cheeky little pass from Sanchez. Guy thinks he's maybe going to get a nice interception toward the box, but he gets it out to Gusto, passes it out to Neto, who makes an awesome run along the right-hand side, cuts in between two defenders. And I thought he was just going to go to the middle here, maybe go to Enzo Fernandez, but he ends up playing a beautiful pass as he's cutting into the middle with his left foot, goes back across behind one of the defenders that he cut in between, finds Guiu, who's making a run. And Guiu could just take this to the corner, kind of waste some time. But instead, it reminded me of a goal that he scored against the Kazakhstan team in the Conference League last year, where he's just taken it at his defender on that right-hand side near the box. And he just passes him, just passes the guy, almost makes it look easy, and then just uses his body to completely outmaneuver him. And then with an IQ that I never expected from Marc Guiu, instead of going at goal, cuts it back to Enzo, who scores it. And that was just a great team goal to get it all the way down there, and then Guiu to really do a lot of that work. Awesome stuff. Really, really awesome stuff.
Yeah, the IQ is the big thing. The IQ and the unselfishness from Marc Guiu here, who did, I mean, I shouldn't say the majority of work for the whole goal, but like you mentioned it. Sanchez started off the play cheekily, I will add, as well. But yeah, then Marc Guiu does most of the work here, getting this assist and unselfishly slotting it over to Enzo Fernandez, who's able to, kind of tap it in a little bit harder than a true tap in, to be fair. But yeah, I mean that really seals the deal for Chelsea, up 2-0 in the 88th minute. Um, Again, like you said, when you could just be looking to hold on to the ball and be defensive, which I hate because there's always a chance a fluke goal could happen, especially from a home side with the home crowd urging them on at the very end. So awesome stuff from Chelsea. And at this point, the match that was already probably over at 1-0 was really put to bed with 2-0.
Yeah, sigh of relief at that point from me. And again, was it a perfect match? No. Were there things you can nitpick? Yes, of course. But you make 4 changes in your lineup. Guys are getting more time on the pitch together. Guys are growing in confidence. Guys like Jamie Gittens getting another assist, which is awesome for him. You're on the road in this early match in the Premier League against a side that really doesn't have any pressure on them. They're just playing, going at you hard, and you withstand that first 20 minutes of hard play, and then you get a nice win. And that's awesome to see as a Chelsea fan. And I couldn't be happier, really. You end 2-0, another clean sheet, second most clean sheets in the league. Chelsea are a top team right now. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look here at the standings. It looks like Man City probably just started. I'm assuming um they're 0-0. Let's check in on this one here. Yeah, 0-0. So they have a point right now technically. But yeah, either way, Chelsea is going to be second or third in the table right now. So that's just awesome to see. Without Cole Palmer, without Colwell, having Chelsea this high in the table is just awesome. And I do think the clean sheet thing is important to mention because you do have to give Big Bob Sanchez a little bit of credit, even though he didn't have a ton of work to do today. Still, outside of his red card this year, just a dynamite turnaround season from Bob Sanchez, I would say.
Huge from Bob. Awards here, I will go. Santos was my Batman man of the match on the day. Just so good in replacing Moises Caicedo. All the interceptions he had, really dictating play from the midfield. My Robin, I'm going with Enzo Fernandez because he's just a fun player, an awesome guy. He's proper Chelsea. I said it. Maybe I need to get an Enzo kit. He's just always there doing his thing, gets a goal toward the end. But I thought Neto really had an underrated performance as well. And then, defense, I'm going Bob Sanchez because even though he didn't do much on the day, starts a nice play for that second goal and keeps a clean sheet.
Yeah, I like those shouts. In addition, I'll give Neto some more love and Gittens just because that first goal to me was the moment of the match because nobody on Chelsea at that point was really doing anything offensively. Delop and Pedro certainly weren't. So to get that goal, I just thought was so important in such a tide shifting, momentum shifting moment in the match that I'm gonna have to shout them out. And then as far as defender, like I think the whole back line could get this award. I really do think the whole back line, including Sanchez, was really solid. But I'd maybe give Sanchez underrated just because he might not get enough love for example, for starting that second goal. And then also Marc Guiu, I mean, coming in here and getting the assist. And again, I can't understate how good that assist was and how unselfish that whole run and play was from Marc Guiu, just kind of bodying the defense single-handedly, basically. So I'll give Guiu a little extra love here too. But agree, Santos and Fernandez were outstanding as well.
Marc Guiu season.
Oh man, the way that the commentators were pronouncing his name, I like chuckled out loud whenever I would hear that.
That was awesome. Yeah, you have to respect the announcers for that one.
Yeah. So are we good to move on over to Bayern Munich now? Do we have any other words for Chelsea? Obviously Barcelona up next in the Champions League, as we've been alluding to.
Yeah, just got two huge matches coming up for Chelsea. So, I'm sure whether it's a short or another episode, I'll preview that more in detail because it's so massive. But yeah, hoping to keep the momentum after this huge win.
Yeah, got to do it. So let's move on over to Bayern Munich versus SC Freiburg. And as mentioned, this was another match where the Always Bayern Chelsea team started off just literally asleep, like maybe not even in the stadium. The Bayern Munich crowd, the Schildkröte, I think is how it's pronounced, but the kind of the ultras basically were quiet for the first 12 minutes of the match. So quiet that you could truly hear players communicating with each other, players clapping, players yelling, grunting, all that stuff. You could hear it. And, that silence just transferred over into how Bayern played for the first 15 minutes of the match or so. And then after that, Bayern shifted into a gear that, is the best in the world is the only way I can describe it. So yeah, going down 0-2 and then scoring 6 unanswered goals. Really just a wild match.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I kind of missed the first 5-ish minutes, but you're playing at home after an international break. You think it's going to be awesome and you'll be hyped up against a lesser opponent. And then, maybe something just happens, whether it's the crowd, whether it's the guys being tired from the break, just out of sync, who knows? But credit to Freiburg for starting off strong. They wanted to be the team to start off on a good note, and they certainly did that. So that can't be understated either. But you always knew Bayern would, flip the script as well, even though they did start poor, because they're never going to be terrible for 90 minutes.
Yeah, and this was just a copy and paste off the Union Berlin playbook. And I'll just mention this up front because I noticed this maybe midway through the match. But teams this season have a new blueprint for how to play Bayern. Whereas last year, their blueprint was kind of sit back in a block and look to be extremely dangerous off the counter. That hasn't worked for teams this year because of how good Bayern's attack has been. If you give Bayern possession, even if you sit back in a block, Bayern's going to find a way to break down that block and put up 3, 4, 5 goals against you. That's just how good Bayern's been as a team. That's just how good Harry Kane has been individually. So teams now are going with this strategy of like pedal to the metal, extremely aggressive, extremely high pressing for the first maybe 20 minutes of a match against Bayern, trying to jump out to a 1-2 goal lead and then slinking back into that block and hoping to, again, get that lead quick, use all your energy, and then, hold on to a lead or maybe get a draw because Bayern's always going to score again, especially if you're playing that kind of block defensive style of play. Bayern's going to break you down eventually, but the goal for these teams is to just hope that Bayern doesn't have enough left in the tank or doesn't have enough time left to score multiple goals after you get off to a lead. So just kind of interesting because it worked so well for Union Berlin, but it just, you see the downside of that strategy for this Freiburg match.
Yeah, and the announcers called this out after they had scored 2 goals, where then they did kind of just go way further back, and it seemed foolish. It's like you're up 2-0 playing on the road. You might as well just kind of go all out because either you blow the lead or you end up staying with the strategy and it works. So that to me was kind of weird. But yeah, this beginning was just crazy, and it seemed like Neuer was a little off. It seemed like the guys were just a step out of where they usually are. But again, credit to Freiburg because apparently they're the set piece kings, which was kind of a wild stat that they have all these goals from set pieces. And these goals were not cheap either. They were some nice goals.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this: both Freiburg's goals came off of set pieces, and Arsenal is foaming at the mouth at this point. They are licking their chops, thinking, "Oh boy, this is this
It's
is us."
disgusting to think about.
I know. Trust me, I was pissed thinking about it. But yeah, let me just quickly mention companies starting 11 because there were a few substitutions. This isn't the lineup exactly that I predicted, but it's the lineup that I predicted in terms of starting with most of your starters and then throwing in 3 or so subs or rotational guys, I should say. But yeah, Neuer did start in between the sticks, and Neuer was out all week with a gastrointestinal infection. And I think he only trained yesterday. So, I mean, he's barely back essentially.
Does
And
he ever need to train? Let's be honest.
that's the thing. But Neuer is also the guy who never wants to seed a match, will never ever seed a match. I mean, it happened with all these other guys that they brought to become the heir to Neuer's throne, and he somehow just denies father time and plays every match basically. Um, but yeah, then you had Stanisic at right back today. Interesting because he's been playing left back, and that means that Konrad Leimer did get a rest, which was good because the guy played so much for Austria. Upamecano and Tau were the center backs. Tom Bischoff playing out of position as left back. Bischoff's one of those guys who I think he's just too good to have him sit on the bench all the time, but there's not really a spot for him in the central midfield, so that's why he's been playing left back. Pavlovic, who did pick up a knock, had to get subbed out for Germany in their game against Slovakia, but he seemed to be fine in this one. Starting alongside Leon Goretzka in the midfield. And then Michael Olise was playing right wing. Leonard Carl was the 10. Luis Diaz was the left wing. And Harry Kane was the 9 for this one.
I really liked this lineup, to be honest. Stanisic in his natural position, obviously the strong center back pairing. Bischoff, I like at left back for the reason that you stated. I like Bischoff. I like what I've seen from him. So if that's a way you can get him on the pitch, I think it's nice. With Bayern being such a possession dominant team, I don't think it matters that he plays left back because you're not really playing a true left back position when you're in this Bayern squad. So I have no issue with that. And I hope he doesn't have an issue with it either because he should appreciate the game time. And then everybody else that's in the lineup, Kimmich, great to get some rest. I trust Pavlovic and Goretzka, even though a lot of the Bayern faithful don't. And then your attack is super strong. Carl is an absolute stud, star boy, upcoming legend, mini Messi. So anytime he's in the lineup, I know that Bayern are going to do special things.
Yeah, you did see Carl take a knock at the end of the game, had to get subbed out, but I hope that he is good to go for Arsenal because I want him to start. No offense to Nico, I guess, because Nico did get a goal today too. But without Luis Diaz, without Jamal Musiala, I want Carl to start. Now, there's also Serge Gnabry, who was not even in the squad today, out injured, which just sucks because it's always this way with Gnabry. As soon as he starts to do amazing, he just gets derailed by injuries. So let's hope it's nothing too serious. He played a lot for the German national team over the break. And agree with what you said on Bischoff. Bischoff himself has made a lot of comments that, he just has such a great attitude. He's always willing to play. He's willing to play wherever company wants him to play, even though it's not his natural position. But like you said, Bayern's outside backs invert into the midfield so much anyways, especially in a match like this, that it doesn't matter a whole lot that he's playing left back. And yeah, Kimmich getting rest was really good as well because Kimmich got injured over the international break too. He played the second match against Slovakia, missed the first match against Luxembourg. So I'm hoping he'll be ready to go for Arsenal. But Kimmich is just one of those guys who, no matter how hurt he is, he's going to play. Like, he was limping around during the international break. You could see him struggling to walk. And then he played against Slovakia and put up a banger of a performance.
Yeah, it is great to get Kimmich rest. We talk about that so much. And You could argue, of course, that the start Bayern had here was because he was not playing, because Leimer was not playing. And maybe that's true. I think the other factors are important as well. The crowd, the international break, a bottom feeder team trying to rise to the occasion. But maybe Kimmich and Leimer are just the two legends, the cogs in the machine that Bayern need.
Yeah, I mean, there is some truth to that. It's not as dramatic as I make it seem when I say Bayern was 2-2 against Freiburg without Leimer and was 4-0 against Freiburg with Leimer. It's not quite that dramatic, but truly just the pace of the game, the way that things flow. I mean, Kimmich literally single-handedly dictates the pace of a match himself. And Bayern couldn't get into that rhythm without him to start. And then you have Leimer, who is literally one of the most important pieces in this attack. And this is the best attack in the world, probably. So that's saying something as well.
And it's crazy looking back because, as I started to watch Bayern when you became a fan, under Tuchel, it almost seemed like Kimmich was on the verge of getting pushed out of the club.
He
And
was. He was.
I kind of didn't know if he was washed. I didn't know that much about him. I knew he was a great player at one point, but you're kind of thinking, okay, is this guy going to still be good? And then now we obviously know he's still incredible, but it's just crazy looking back. And that was only, 2 years ago, really.
I can tell you for a 100% certain fact that if Thomas Tuchel was still coaching this team today, Kimmich would be employed by PSG.
Really, PSG, you think would have been his move, huh?
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were the most serious about getting him, and he was so at odds with Tuchel that's where he'd be, I think.
Well, PSG probably wouldn't win the Champions League with Kimmich. And that's not saying Kimmich is bad, but I think the players they ended up having and with their team, they were just unbelievable. So that really could have changed the course of history.
It could have changed the course of history. I mean, Kimmich even needed so much convincing from the board to re-up his contract even after Tuchel. He was so hurt by the board basically backing Tuchel instead of him when they were at odds. So it was basically a cluster F, a dumpster fire for a while.
And that's a great transition because let's talk about the cluster F dumpster fire of these first two goals.
Yeah,
Great goals for Freiburg, as I said, but Bayern's defenders here on these set pieces
set
did
pisses if you're Bayern.
they got fried.
Yeah. Yeah, nice, nice. So Suzuki's goal here was brilliant. I mean, it was off of a corner. There was a really nice flick, and it just caught like a back heel flick, and it just caught Bayern off guard. A nice finish by Suzuki as well. He played really well, I thought, for most of the match, especially in this beginning portion. I always talk about how I loved Ritsu Dohan for Freiburg, now a Frankfurt player. Suzuki could be the next incarnation, I guess, as a Japanese attacker for Freiburg. But the second goal was, again, off a set piece. Again, Arsenal just sitting there at the edge of their seats. The second goal was pretty much all Neuer's fault. It was a nice goal, but Neuer just mistimed his jump, and it was a header, and it just kind of like went over Neuer, where if he just jumped at a regular time, I think he would have been able to at least knock it away.
Yeah, pretty weird by Neuer. I won't comment further because I respect the man, but he's got to do better there. The first goal, though, I'm obsessed with near post corners. I love when teams do them and then they can either get a flick on like that one or a header. You know, Chelsea have had a goal like that where they get a header over to the next guy. I just think when you're using multiple spots in the box like that, it opens up so many more possibilities. Guys fall asleep at the back post. Suzuki wasn't quite back post, but he was toward that other side. And then for the second goal to just do completely opposite, where you're going just straight to the back post with the corner, kind of just changed things up. And that shows that they clearly practice that stuff all the time.
Yeah, and to be quite fair, these were deserved goals. I mean, the second one, maybe not, because I think Neuer should have saved it, but Freiburg deserved to be winning at this point in the match, no doubt about it. Freiburg literally dominated the first 20-ish minutes of this match. Like, Bayern did not have the ball that much, did not have any shots, any like good string of play in the attack whatsoever. It was literally all Freiburg in these first 20 minutes. So, credit to them, congrats to them for that. But I didn't like just how early they abandoned that attacking philosophy and started to defend. Obviously, there is a time to do that, but Bayern is not going to sit idly by going down 0-2 at home.
Oh, you knew Bayern were going to get back into it. Like I said, they're never going to be terrible for 90 minutes. They woke up. You woke up the beast. The beast being, of course, Leonard Carl, and Bayern just started to go to work. They started to say, all right, we're just going to possess the ball. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. We're just going to go ping, 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 ping. We're going to be awesome. And the rest of that first half was that. The rest of the match was that. I mean, I'm trying to think of other chances Freiburg really had in the match, and maybe they had a couple, but it was just so Bayern from that point that had Freiburg almost ceased to exist, really.
You're right. And, Leonard Carl and Michael Olise double-handedly take this match by the scruff of its neck and yank it back towards Bayern Munich, because at this point, these two guys just went off. I mean, absolutely went off. You see the first goal in the 22nd minute. Great moves, great cut-in moves by Olise, like he likes to do with his left foot from that right-hand side, finding Carl, and Carl just bends in a beautiful shot. And again, these two, the way that they were playing together, interchanging, finding each other with passes, runs, all that stuff, it was what turned the game around. And this first goal from Carl was my moment of the match.
Huge moment of the match. It was an awesome goal, man. The connection between Carl and Elise that we're starting to see. This could be massive for things going forward for Bayern. And I'm not talking just this year, but going forward into the next years, because eventually you'll have Musiala come back. Let's not forget Kane is still the best player in the squad, but these two cooking on that right-hand side. Then let's also throw in Limer eventually playing right back. I mean, this Bayern attack is already the best in the world. And you throw a guy like Carl in, man, I mean, it's I'm actually getting chills right now talking about it because it could be so special.
Well, I mean, it would be so special in years to come, but unfortunately, as Byron Space on Twitter has, rightfully pointed out to everybody, Olise's gone to Liverpool next year, Kane's gone to Barcelona, Carl's gone to Real Madrid, Diaz is going back to the Prem. And let's see what else. I mean, Davies to Real Madrid, he did call that one too. Upa to Real Madrid as well. So Bayern isn't going to have a lot of players next year, but at least until January when they all leave, it's going to be fun.
Well, they'd still have Limer, which means that's all that matters. He's the only player that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just crazy, what people say, and yeah, the Kane to Barca stuff has been making me laugh because that's been picking up a lot of steam in the media, obviously. People think that Bayern Space is a real reporter and they just run with these things, so it is kind of funny. But yeah, getting back to the match, Bayern started to have possession after this. They started to look more dangerous in the attack. For a while, their final pass was just kind of missing. You could see that they were building. I always joke that it would be very nice if Kane could be on the end of Kane's passes more often, but that's no shade to the rest of the attack. It just looked like that for a little bit, that they were kind of just missing that final action. But that all changed really in the 45th minute. From here on out for the rest of the match, actually 47th minute technically, Michael Olise. Leonard Carl returns the favor to Michael Olise, who ends up scoring. Pavlovic has a shot that is saved by Noah Atebolu, Freiburg's keeper, or deflected, I should say. and Carl gets it, dishes it off to Olise, and Olise puts it home to tie the game right before half, which was super, super important as well, just because Bayern was building at this point and Freiburg was looking more vulnerable. So it was important for Bayern to get one back, get another one back, go into halftime 2-2.
Yeah, I do think it was key to tie it up by half because then it really lets the air out of the building for Freiburg. If they were still up 2-1 at half, maybe they'd be thinking they have a chance, can maybe get out of there with a draw. But once it is 2-2, you really got to be down on yourself and thinking, man, we were up 2-0 and they easily came back to tie it. It's got to be a devastating feeling.
Yeah, and you can tell at that point Freiburg is pretty much out of ideas. And when you see the dog Konrad Leimer come on for Leon Goretzka at halftime, yeah, I mean, it's over. Like I said, Bayern won this match 4-0 once Leimer came on. So you see that move, which essentially pushes Bischoff into the midfield alongside Pavlovic. And then Leimer actually comes on to play left back. Stanisic stays at right back. So that's what the lineup looked like with that change. But yeah, again, you just see right from the jump after halftime that Bayern's looking great. You see actually a goal that gets ruled offside, correctly ruled offside. Carl scores, but Stanisic was offside in the buildup of that one, I believe. So, Bayern's building. Kane has 2 shots at that point that get blocked. So it's looking good. And then Bayern finally takes the lead and really doesn't look back in the 55th minute, scoring off of a set piece of their own. Michael Olise whipping in kind of a far post curling ball to Diet Upamecano, who puts that one home. And nice for Upamecano in the midst of this ever dragging on contract negotiation. He's continues to make a case for himself to get paid that high signing fee that he wants.
Massive, massive goal for Upa. You just love to see it. Easy goal at the end of the day when you have the ball put on a platter to you right there. But great job by Upa to get his defender off of him. You just got to be stronger if you're that defender. And they should know because they're set piece kings. They should know that that's just an easy way to give up a goal. But at the end of the day, Freiburg, I think, was just in their heads probably at this point in the match, really.
Yeah, and at this point, Arsenal just went from chomping at the bits to being completely stuffed and full and didn't want to eat anymore. So they were watching this one, and at this point, I think maybe some of their spirits were tampered a little bit. Which it's always awesome to tamper Arsenal's spirits. It's just a great way to begin your day.
Hopefully, tampered so much that they look awful tomorrow against Spurs. Although, do I really want to see Spurs look great? I mean, kind of hoping for a
Nil
draw, I
nil,
guess,
nil
in
nil
that one.
draw.
0-0, like just devastatingly physical draw that each team is just battered and bruised.
I'll take
No,
it.
no actual injuries. I'm not going to root for that, but
Oh
just
yeah.
tough and rumble tumble.
Yeah, WWE style. But yeah, we see Kane then score in the 60th minute, really piling on the goals at this point and showing absolutely no signs of slowing down. Pavlovic gets the assist, and Leonard Carl continues to impress. He was big in the buildup of this one, but it's just, I think it shows again how important Carl is becoming, but also how important Pavlovic is, and honestly how underrated Pavlovic kind of is, just because he's always involved in this buildup. It took him a little bit to get going in this match, but when he found his footing here, he was great. And Kane, just with a beautiful finish, kind of takes his time a little bit on this one and just bends in a shot. Nicely done with enough pace to get past the keeper, really.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seemed like the ball was bobbled a little bit from the right edge into the middle, but you gotta find the pass over to Kane, and you still gotta finish it. So you knew Kane was going to score at some point in this match, especially with how open, how dynamic Bayern were looking. It would have been crazy if Harry Kane didn't get a goal or an assist.
And that's the thing, like, when you're playing Bayern, you know that Kane is gonna score. So it's like, even though if you're Freiburg, you're up 2-0 at one point in this match, but if you're whoever and you're up, you just know Kane's going to score. And that's like the crazy thing about playing Bayern. Unfortunately, in the 71st minute, we did see Leonard Carl, well, a little bit before, pick up a knock, a hip injury, it looks like. He says he's going to be fine. I did read a quote from him after the match that he thinks he's going to be fine. So that is a good sign. Because again, I really want him to start against Arsenal, especially if Gnabry's out. So Jackson comes in for Carl in the 71st. Kim comes on for Upamecano, who also picked up a knock, but I think Upamecano's was clearly a knock. It looked like somebody stepped on his foot and he was just kind of limping around for a while. So he should be fine. Again, another guy that you can't have on the injury list for this Arsenal match coming up. But then the 78th minute, we saw Nicholas Jackson score. Michael Olise get his hat trick of assists, his third assist of the match here, really doing most of the work for this goal and finding Nico for a little bit of a glorified tap in. Still a nice finish from Nico, but Olise just cutting through the defense, hot knife through butter style, and then dishing it off to Jackson, who still has to do the work to put it home. But at that point, it's 5-2 Bayern.
Yeah, that was his best assist on the day, in my opinion. And you have to give credit to Nico because everybody gets so pissed at Diaz when he misses those. So
True.
let's give credit to Jackson. He puts it away, and he didn't even like strike it that clean, but I think the pass was almost a little bouncier than he expected, maybe. So it was a decent finish, and good for him. He was only on for 7 minutes before scoring, so that's quite efficient.
Yeah, very good for Nico Jackson. 83rd minute, we see Hiroki Ito come on and Wisdom Mike for Harry Kane and Alexander Pavlovich. Just awesome for Hiroki Ito to be back in the squad, Hiroki Ito to be back on the pitch for the first time since, I believe, March. I tweeted this, but like, it is so good to see Ito back for so many reasons. The guy literally has broken his foot 3 times, same foot. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, is a guy ever going to be able to play soccer again when you break your same foot 3 times in a row? I mean, that's just insane. So having Ito on was awesome for him personally, but also for the squad, just because he adds another reinforcement to that back line. So awesome to see Ito, and always awesome to see Wisdom Mike. And not just because his name is so cool, but because he is a youngster who's maybe a little bit behind Carl in terms of his development, but still has a super high ceiling, super high potential for Wisdom Mike.
Yeah, it's always a good thing when you can bring on guys like that toward the end of the game because it's clearly going well for you. And I think Von Son probably loved being able to do that toward the end. Ito and Wisdom Mike, I mean, both guys coming on is awesome.
Yeah, and finally, the last goal, the cherry on top of this day for Michael Olise, who at this point had 3 assists in 1 goal, gets a second goal. So a hat trick of assists and a brace of goals for Michael Olise, with a textbook Michael Olise goal, cutting through the defense from that right-hand side with his left foot, hot knife through butter, and bending a wonderful, wonderful shot past the keeper as he does. Such a pretty goal. I mean, a silky smooth goal. You look at this goal and you realize why it's called the beautiful game.
I mean, I feel like I say this every time, but it's still crazy to me that people let him cut in on his left foot like that.
Yeah, it is. It
It
is.
just makes no sense. Like, what's coming.
It's really Robin-esque when you think about a Bayern Munich player on that side cutting in with that foot. And there's really no other way to put it. Also nice to see Hiroki Ito technically get the assist for that one as well. But yeah, cherry on top, 6-2 Bayern Munich get the dub in this one. And like it was a game that, again, like started off not good, but ended up incredible.
Yeah, just an absolutely huge win for Bayern. Great way to start off after this break and into this run of play that's going to be huge coming up with games. So nice to get a comfortable win in the end.
Yeah, and then as far as match awards go, I'll give you mine. Michael Olise, man of the match. I mean, this is arguably the best performance of the year for Bayern, at least. Again, 2 goals, 3 assists. How can you possibly top that? And Kane has had some hat tricks, a million braces, but like this might be the best performance of the year for Bayern. Robin, I'm giving to Lennart Karl for obvious reasons. He's just a star in the making, as we said, reminiscent of Messi, even though it's blasphemous to compare anybody to Messi. Just the way he plays is so similar in style and profile to Messi. Underrated, I'm giving Harry Kane just because, he gets one goal and that's an underrated match for Harry Kane, which is pretty hilarious. And then defender, I'm going to give to Upamecano for that goal.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with any of those, to be quite honest.
Awesome. Well, as we mentioned, next up for Bayern Munich in the Champions League is Arsenal. They're going away on Wednesday to the Emirates, to London, to face off against Arsenal. It's going to be interesting. Bayern will be without, obviously, Musiala and Davies, but also Luis Diaz for that red card, and potentially without Serge Gnabry. So we'll see. Arsenal, I know, is banged up as well, which you never love to see. I'd love to see both of these teams play in a Champions League final completely healthy or something. But nonetheless, it's the top of the table in the Champions League team, Bayern Munich versus the second place team, Arsenal. Arsenal obviously on top of the Premier League, Bayern on top of the Bundesliga. So it's really just a blockbuster matchup on all fronts, and I'm going to have my popcorn ready.
Two huge matches Tuesday and Wednesday for this podcast, and it's Arsenal week because Chelsea then play Arsenal on the following weekend. So again, hoping Bayern can batter the Gunners, and then Chelsea will be left facing a frail team next weekend.
That's the hope. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say to send this one off. I don't think. Any closing words from you?
Happy birthday to us.
To us. Perfect. And remember to subscribe for our birthday. I mean, it's the least you could do. It really is.
Well, we've already picked up 2 subs this morning, so off to a great start.
Wow. Thank you, everybody. And Mia San Mia.
Up to Chelsea.